that he has here is he only has 2 Force of Wills because he doesn't have a ton of blue cards in his deck to support them. But he's got the Spell Pierce here, and he's got the Swords of Plowshares, so he's got some ability to control the stack, and he's got some interesting Green Sun Zenith targets with a 1 of Sylvan Safekeeper, a 1 of Gaddock Teague, and a 1 of Scavenging Ooze.
Okay. So, I mean, it is definitely a deck that I haven't seen for a long time. For you guys that are not familiar with Bryan, we know we had him on camera yesterday playing Blue-White Flash. He was playing for top 8 and ended up losing to John Wade. But Bryan is a player who has moved here from Utah, from the Salt Lake City area, that small little gaming community. He moved here with his girlfriend. His girlfriend's attending graduate school. He's working. He actually lost his match playing for top 8 at Pro Tour Barcelona earlier this year. So he at least has a Pro Tour top 16, a couple Star City Games top 16 finishes as well. So a very skilled player. And both these players, I believe, are X and 1. So we are underway here.
Yeah. So we have a 1-drop from Scott with the Niv Magus Elemental. So I haven't seen this deck in action yet, but you have, and it looks like it's a very aggressive deck.
Yeah, it's very similar to the Blue-Red Delver decks that Andrew Shrout kind of put up on the map. With he's basically, Scott has cut Goblin Guide for Niv Magus Elemental, and then has found room for 4 Flusterstorms to be able to quote unquote go off with Niv Magus Elemental. But it's very reminiscent of the deck that Andrew Shrout actually did win a Legacy Open Series title with. It has the burn, it has the card manipulation of Brainstorm and Ponder and Gataxian Probe, and then the burn of Lightning Bolt, Fire and Ice, and Price of Progress. So it doesn't put great creatures on the battlefield like a Rug Delver deck does, but it just tries to get you dead faster than a Rug Delver deck does.
Yeah. And the Niv Magus Elemental can get very big very quickly.
Yeah, we saw in the previous match where Scott did put I think he ate 6 spells with it on turn 5 because of a Flusterstorm. Unfortunately, the Niv Magus Elemental got wiped away, but I mean, it was going to be a lethal attack, as we do see a Green Sun Zenith here from Bryan. A little manipulation prior to that with Brainstorm.
Yeah, so he got the Brainstorm back a couple cards. Now he's going to shuffle them. He's going to accelerate with the Dryad Arbor. And it looks like he's aiming for a turn 3 Jace the Mind Sculptor, which is potentially good against the Niv Magus Elemental if any spells go under it to make it bigger.
So we're going to see what Scott's going to do here as we see Scott sacrifice his Flooded Strand. Now there are 2 Brainstorms and a Forcible hiding out over in his hand. Not sure the rest of the contents right now.
Yeah. We might have a Price of Progress given that he's getting a basic land.
Okay, try to slide in right now before it can be countered. And if it is countered, and I want to make sure if and Pat and I weren't sure about this, so if he plays Price of Progress and let's say Bryan tries to Forcible it, he can just eat it with the Magus Elemental,
yeah.
right? Okay, I just want to make
yummy.
sure. Yeah, okay.
That's one of the exciting things about the deck. Counter spells are actually really bad against this deck as long as you have a Niv Magus Elemental out. So Brainstorm, Force of Will. Yeah, there is a red card. I think it's Price of Progress.
So we're coming across for 1.
It's interesting they fetched pre-combat with a Brainstorm in hand.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised at that as well, especially if he doesn't fire off the Price of Progress here.
Might be waiting to see if there's a block declared. It certainly looks like Bryan's thinking through. And he's taking 1.
And Bryan says, no blocks. Don't think you can kill me this turn. Now we're going to see a Brainstorm. So now this is extra curious with him brainstorming, with him fetching first and then brainstorming.
So there's Lightning Bolt, blue card land, just putting back blue Delta. And there's Arid Mesa. It looks like a Daze is the blue card. So he puts back 2 lands. So we've got Lightning Bolt, Daze, Force of Will, Brainstorm, Price of Progress, and a fetch land?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Yep, and a Scalding Tarn.
So, not a lot of pressure from Scott's creatures.
As we are going to see a Lightning Bolt take care of that Dryad Arbor. Yeah, he's not putting a ton of pressure on. He has stopped Bryan from casting a turn 3 Jace the Mind Sculptor, which is pretty important.
That's true, but if we're not doing anything with the Niv Magus Elemental, Bryan is just going to be able to wait him out. If the Niv Magus Elemental isn't doing anything, then disrupting the Dryad Arbor, disrupting the ramp isn't actually accomplishing anything.
Sure. as we're going to see Scalding Tarn here from Scott, knock him down to 18. I definitely agree with you on that point. I mean, a Daze there is, relatively good as reliquary, but if you can't capitalize on stopping this sort of development, then it's not really doing very much at all.
Yeah.
And it's in turn, he's stunting his own development by picking up a land with Daze.
And again, it's kind of curious that like he's choosing to use a fetch land. Well, I guess there were 2 fetch lands on the top of his library that he wanted to get rid of. Well, he got rid of one of them.
Yeah.
So that's fine, but like again, he would just have been in better shape if the previous turn, he had attacked with it before cracking the fetch land, and then brainstormed, cracked the fetch land he had, and then lightning bolted.
And again, we see a cracking the fetch land and then a brainstorm. So
Yeah, the order of operations just is not exciting here. So Island, Arid Mesa, Force of Will, Price of Progress. Let's finish resolving that brainstorm before we do anything else, guys.
As a judge, that's got to be a little tough.
Yeah. Delver of Secrets. That's exciting. So presumably we're going to see like land spell go on top, and then he's going to cast Delver of Secrets.
I would like to believe that's going to be the case.
Looks like the island that we dazed back is going on top. And Force of Will? That is not the card I would put on top. I would put that Price of Progress on top, in all likelihood.
We are going to see Delver, and we're going to see an attack for 1, so...
Like, Force of Will is not the card that I want to reveal off of Delver.
Yeah, I'd rather leave that information hidden.
Yeah.
So we are going to see a Tundra here from Bryan. Jace the Mind Sculptor can be cast this turn. Bit of a risk. It is opening itself up to dying, potentially.
Yeah. So if this resolves, are you just brainstorming, or what do you want to do with it?
Looking at Bryan's hand, we know he has another Jace the Mind Sculptor. He doesn't have a ton of things going on. You've seen Umazawa Jit, you see a Windswept Heath. His hand doesn't have a lot of action. Jit is, there, but relatively naked, nothing to really do with it. So I think, for me, I'm going to brainstorm here, get my information, and then, give Scott the opportunity to, if he wants to kill Jace, he can do that, or if he wants to deal me some amount of damage, because I don't think, if I'm Bryan, then I'm going to take a lethal attack from Niv Magus Elemental this turn.
Yeah.
But you are just going to see Jace bounce Niv Magus Elemental.
That is not the card I want to bounce there, right? So we can assume, Bryan can assume that Scott's Delver is going to flip there.
Yeah, I think it's a very safe bet.
I think you're better off bouncing the Delver, potentially preventing the Delver from flipping the next turn, and making Scott have to actually put a spell into his Niv Magus Elemental in order to kill Jace. But like you, I kind of like a brainstorm there. Although I guess I could actually also see a Fate Seal on Scott and disrupt the flipping of the Delver.
See here, I just don't feel like that we really accomplished very much, as we're going to see a Scalding Tarn here for Scott. I don't feel like that we really accomplished very much with our Jace that turn. Jace is such a dynamic card that, when you do have the opportunity to cast it and it resolves, you have to get the most out of it, especially when you're looking at opposing creatures. And there, like, as you said, there was a Brainstorm that resolved and then a Delver that was played, so in all likelihood, unless there were some very faulty operations, Delver is going to be flipping, and then bouncing Niv Magus Elemental means that Delver is going to kill the Jace.
Yeah.
So I just don't feel like you're getting a lot out of what is arguably the best card in Bryan's deck.
So at this point, like, neither player has an overwhelming advantage, but Scott definitely feels like he's winning.
Yes.
He's got 2 creatures left in his hand. He's got the Price of Progress, which is going to deal a lot of damage eventually. And Bryan just isn't doing anything. And while he's gotten into the mid game fairly unscathed, like, his hand is depleted. He just doesn't have much in the way of resources.
Now, what's tough here for Bryan is because he's probably never seen this deck before, because it's not really a commonly played deck. Niv Magus Elemental isn't a very commonly played card, as we see with Umazawa Jit here. He keeps, he thought for a little while about blocking Niv Magus Elemental with Dryad Arbor. Then he thought for a while before bouncing it with Jace, the Mind Sculptor. So he is under the impression that this thing can kill me, like, pretty fast.
Yeah.
So in a respect, like, when playing with Niv Magus Elemental, you're very scared as an opponent who doesn't really know what the opponent's deck can do, how fast it can kill him. But
That's
right
true.
now, we have all the information, and we know that like Magus Elemental in this particular game,
Yeah.
not very good.
But I mean, like Bryan may have seen like the Pro Tour coverage where there was the Niv Magus Modern deck, and that deck was like frightening. You know, it would be like, I'm going to cast these 3 free spells, and then I'm going to cast a Storm spell, and suddenly like this thing is like, 18 power coming at you.
Yeah.
So I could see like how he might be playing very carefully around that.
As we are going to see a Gitaxian Probe here from Scott, revealing just the last card, Jace the Mind Sculptor. Scott is going to draw a card. He also did pay 2 life on that.
Yeah. And so Scott is really far ahead. His second Delver flipped naturally off the Gitaxian Probe. So he's got 6 power in the air. And Bryan has the Umezawa's Jite and a creature that he can equip it to. But like he's not in great shape, and it looks like Scott has drawn a Fire Ice, so the Jite actually isn't going to do anything when it gets equipped to the Qasali Pride Mage, because the Qasali Pride Mage is going to get burned.
So we see Bryan, it looks like he drew a Green Sun Zenith. And that is going to go on the stack. Interesting to see what this is going to be.
One. Some Noble Hierarch?
No.
Oh, Sylvan Safekeeper. That's exciting.
Yep. And Scott is reading it, and we are going to bring it up.
Yeah.
I think, is this the first invitational card? I might be wrong about that.
It's Olerade's invitational card. I think the first one was Rootwater Thief for Mike Long. But like it's definitely in the first like 3 or 4. Yeah. So Scott must be kicking himself for not firing in response to the Green Sun for 1.
Not only that, now that Green Sun's resolved, this changes everything about this game now, right? Because not only can he not Fire Ice this Qasali Pride Mage, but additionally, Sylvan Safekeeper is going to allow the Price of Progress in Scott's hand to just be off.
Yeah, that's true.
It's completely realistic for Bryan to just go, sack all my lands.
Yeah, Armageddon myself.
Yeah.
So it looks like we are attempting to equip to the Qasali Pride Mage, and Scott is thinking about firing in response, which would force the Sylvan Safekeeper activation, which gives the creature Shroud, not hexproof, so the equip would also fail.
Okay.
That would be the heads-up play here, I think. Actually, I guess icing it is even better, because no, firing it's better.
Yeah, I think firing it is better. Just trying to get it dead.
Yeah. I mean, like, it's not going to resolve either way. Oh,
we can only assume.
That Green Sun Zenith was a kick in the teeth for Scott.
Okay, I just got a tweet from Yawgmoth's Will. The first, and I'm kicking myself for not knowing this because I used to play this card when I was younger. The first invitational card was Darwin Castle's Avalanche Riders.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Should have known that. I'm foolish. I know so much about Magic, and I let that one slip through the cracks.
So many good invitational cards, and Rootwater Thief.
Heck of a card. So now we are going to see the fire, and we're just going to go, all right, sack this.
So he did it to the Sylvan Safekeeper, which...
That was the target?
Yeah.
That's even more curious. I mean, some of the plays have just been very, very curious this match.
Yeah. So we're going to get 2 counters on the Jite, which are probably going to be used to just kill off a Delver. Insectile Aberration.
Yeah, he can do this. No reason to do it when he's tapped out. He can do it at any point.
Yeah. Like, Bryan... Yeah. Scott would have been much better off firing the Qasali Pride Mage, because we wouldn't have the counters on, so he'd be able to attack in for 6, and then when he cast Price of Progress, Bryan would have to sack all but one of his lands. And now, because those counters are there, Bryan can gain some life, he can kill a Insectile Aberration. Like, he's in so much better position.
So we see a Brainstorm put back, 2 lands, Arid Mesa being the second one of them. I'm trying to wrap my head around the thinking of Scott's plays this game, and I just quite don't understand them.
Yeah.
Just between his sequencing and just how he's organizing his brainstorms.
So he's got a lightning bolt in his hand and the Price of Progress and the Niv Magus Elemental. He may be planning on just chumping with the Niv Magus Elemental and trying to burn out Bryan. But again, like, look at the 3 damage that is not coming through because we chose the wrong fire target. You know, and when we got to fire, the issue was that, you know, we needed to use it as a tempo spell, not as a removal spell.
Yeah. And don't forget also that there is, I mean, we see in Scott's hand there's a Force of Will and a Daze, but there is a Jace the Mind Sculptor looming in Bryan's hand. It's not like he's on empty right now.
That's true.
As we do see Niv Magus Elemental. He's going to draw a card. We see it to be Force of Will.
Does Sylvan Safekeeper let you sack any land to give Shroud?
Yes.
It's kind of interesting that we did that with the Savannah instead of with the fetch land.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising as we are going to see a Lightning Bolt here. Bryan knocks himself down to 6 from the fetch land, and then he's going to go down to 3. And he's really just going to try to get this Jace the Mind Sculptor resolved. I am also a little surprised that that was his line of play.
Yeah, so we're going to resolve Jace here. Presumably we're going to bounce the Niv Magus Elemental, get in for 3 with Qasali Pride Mage, get some counters on it, and then kill the Insectile Aberration. And suddenly, like, Bryan has, you know, an active GT. Oh, there's a Daze in Scott's hand.
He's going to take care of the Jace, and he's going to come in here. So now he has to be extremely, extremely careful with his Umezawa's Jit, with how he wants to use it, and playing around Price of Progress and everything else that he can do.
Yeah.
It looks like Bryan just pushed himself up to 5. Okay.
So Bryan's concerned about getting bolted out of the game. Is that why we think he's gaining life there?
Yeah. Just
see, but like, well, here's the point where we sack all of our lands to Sylvan Safekeeper.
He's just gonna have to sack. He's gonna have to sack the 3 duels. He's gonna be able to at least keep a forest, which is fortunate for Bryan.
Yeah.
But what's also, wow, this is super interesting actually. So, not only is he going to have to sack the 3 lands to Price of Progress, but in response to Price of Progress. But once that happens, Scott can just go, oh, okay, I'll just eat it with Niv Magus Elemental then.
So maybe you just sack 2.
So if he sacks 2, he goes down to 3.
Right, and then he can chump the Niv Magus. Actually, yeah, he doesn't even need to chump the Niv Magus. So he goes down to 3. When he gets attacked by the Insectile Aberration, he gains 2 life off the Umezawa's GT, and he takes 1 from the Niv Magus Elemental.
And so,
but he's sacking all 3 of them.
Yeah.
It looks like, and then the price is going to get eaten by the Niv Magus Elemental, and then he's going to have to chump. Yeah.
So yeah, he's in some trouble here.
This game has gone interestingly back and forth. So he gives Shroud to the.
He doesn't eat the Price of Progress.
Oh wow. Scott, what are you doing, Scott?
And so now we just see Delver come in, and it just is going to knock Bryan down to 2.
And so, like, gaining the 2 life off the GT, it was probably better spent just using both counters on the Delver and killing it. You end up, you know, being about the same life total, but there's no Delver on the board.
Yeah. Like, I understand Bryan's rationale of just wanting to do it when he's tapped out, so he doesn't have to play the game around burn spells. Like,
it's true, but like he ends up taking 3 from the Delver.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to kill that Delver right now.
you just want to get that off of the table. Is there any reason to get it off the table right now versus like if you want to kill something, maybe Niv Magus Elemental is the one that you want to kill? Because I don't think there's any pump spells coming. You know, there is the potential for a stifle type effect.
Yeah, and like there's just so many unknowns in the Scott stack. Like you're playing against it, and there could be some weird card that you just aren't aware of. He could have brute force in there.
Sure.
You know, we don't. It's not a standard deck. We don't know what it is. So it looks like Bryan is opting to gain life with the GT instead of trying to kill the Delver.
Okay, so he's going to go up to 6 and then down to 3.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. He's just going to gain another one. Okay. Well, I can't really tell. A lot of hand motioning.
Yeah.
A lot of posturing. Can't really quite tell what they're doing. But yeah, it looks like he went up to 6 and down to 3. Okay.
And honestly, like, I think I would rather be at 1 with 2 counters so that when you attack with Kasali Pride Mage here, he has to chump block because you're threatening to kill him with 2 pumps from the GT.
Sure. So we see Niv Magus mental jump in the way, and if I know anything back from playing with Umezawa GT back in the day, if the blocking is happening on the creatures, you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
Niv Magus Elemental with no gain there. 2 Umezawa GT counters added, and now Bryan can go up to 9 and down to 6. He can take care of Delver's secrets and have a counter left on Umezawa GT to go to 5. Or alternatively, he can just make an attack for lethal now, as we see Price of Progress drawn for Bryan.
Price of Progress not actually very good when you're the only one with non-basic lands in play.
And that's why we let him in the booth. So we're going to see Bryan just do the same song and dance again. Gain 2.
Alright, I think he's realized that it's better to be able to just kill Scott.
Yeah. He says, alright, I'll take the 3. There's nothing you can really do to me unless there's a sudden shock.
God, be sick if Bryan was playing around sudden shock this whole game, and that's what's been going on.
That would be impressive.
Oh, God. Oh, no, it's fine.
Yeah, no, he should be just fine. I think he can just afford. He can go for it, right?
Yeah. So for a second, I thought Bryan was getting himself in trouble by playing the Misty Rainforest pre-combat because of the potential for a tie with the Price of Progress in Scott's hand, but it doesn't matter because it can be sacked.
Yeah, and Scott can't even cast the Price of Progress because he has his own non-basics and he's at 6 life.
Right, but like if Bryan didn't have a way to get rid of the non-basic land, Scott could have forced a tie when Bryan went pump.
Sure.
And then Price of Progress to kill us both.
Sure.
But anyway, so Bryan pulls it out. It feels like both players should have won and by a larger margin.
I'm inclined to agree with you. I am.
So let's take a look at the sideboards here and think about what do we think that people are doing here?
Well, as Scott is going to be on the play this particular game, taking a look at what he's got to offer, Smash the Smithereens is something that could join us because in the forefront of his mind is I just lost Umezawa's Jit.
Yep.
So that is a card that could come in. There's 4 surgical extractions. Don't really think that's where he's going to want to be. 2 Sulfur Elementals, which are okay against what's going on, but nothing great. 3 Spell Snares, I would foresee those are going to come in. And then 3 Submerge, which are almost certainly going to come in.
Yeah, I like bringing in the Spell Snares and the Submerges and maybe a Smash or 2. The Sulfur Elemental does not seem exciting. It's almost certainly here for Mother of Runes and for Thalia, and it's just not relevant here. So on Bryan's side, he's got the option to go a little bit bigger with the Jason at Elspeth. Elspeth actually seems pretty good in this matchup.
It seems perfectly reasonable.
It's going to be able to create chump blockers. I kind of like taking out some of the counter magic here and just trying to go for 1-for-1s. So he's got another GTA that I think he brings in. He's got 3 Path to Exiles, which I think are probably pretty good. The one of Scavenging Ooze might be okay just as a guide to trade, but it's probably not going to get that big, so that doesn't seem super exciting. So I kind of want to take out like 2 Force of Wills and a Spell Pierce for Elspeth, 3 Paths, and I guess I have to find one other card to take out.
I could cut like a Vendilion Glick. I guess that trades with Delver pretty well.
Yeah, I kind of want to keep in the Vendilion Click. I don't know.
Gaddock's not very impressive.
Oh, that's true. That's very true. Yeah. So, bringing in 4 cards, just like bringing in removal and bringing in this late game trump of Elspeth seems like the plan that I would want to take.
Yeah, and plus with him boarding an Elspeth, as you said, or assuming he's going to board an Elspeth, and he has Jaces in his deck and Green Sun Zenith, I think that Gaddock is a pretty easy card to move over to the sideboard for this game.
That's very true.
So we do see both players sideboarding right now. It's kind of an interesting matchup. It's hard to say who this favors, to be completely honest with you. That was a game that I think we both thought that Bryan was going to lose, probably should have lost. And it was able to, the Zenith was obviously the backbreaker there.
Yeah.
But now Scott has that information of Sylvan Safekeeper being in Bryan's deck, so that may change a few things. The Zenith, for one, was rather innocuous, and then it just changed the entire game.
That's absolutely true. It was the backbreaker, as you said. So I definitely feel like Scott is favored pre-board. I think Bryan is getting the better deal with boarding just by being able to go up to 7 Swords Plowshare, Path to Exile type effects. Scott is not very threat dense. He's got the 4 Delver, he's got 4 Niv Magus Elemental, and then he's got 4 Snapcaster Mage. And while he does have some burn, it's not that deep. He's really like he can finish off Bryan from like 6 life, certainly. Yeah. 9 life, probably. 12 life, that's pretty hard.
Sure.
So I feel like really like Scott needs to get Bryan down into the single digits with his creatures.
Okay. As far as our little invitational card debate earlier during that game, from our show director, apparently Ali Rod won the first invitational but had the 4th invitational card.
Ah.
Okay.
So you're like half right and I'm fully wrong? Is that what's going on here?
If you're scoring at home, yeah.
Yeah.
That looks to be the case. So we have both players. Looks like we are drawing opening hands. Scott is taking a look, considering his options. And it looks like he's going to go down to 6, and Bryan looks happy.
Yeah. So we've got 3 invitational cards here, right? We've got the Sylvan Safekeeper, which is all Irad is. We've got Snapcaster Mage, and we've got your invitational card, Gaddock Teague.
Yes.
The Kithkin.
I see. Yeah. You made it funny. You are a funny man. That's the second time Gaddock Teague has come up today in relation to me and Kithkin. And again,
he hates big spells.
Yeah, we're not friends.
You just like attacking with small guys.
Yeah, we're not friends because Spectral Procession is a better friend of mine than Gaddock Teague.
That's true.
So he's someone that, is like an acquaintance of mine. That's all. Like, we know each other. We're like nice to each other when we see each other, but I wouldn't call him like a friend or anything.
You call him when like you need the 8th for the draft, but when you're organizing the draft, you're not.
Yeah, if there's no one else.
Yeah.
If there's like no one else to play, I would call
tier
Gaddock
3, tier 4.
Yeah.
You weren't in Seattle for the tier debacle, were you?
I've heard about the tier debacle, but I wouldn't call him for a cube draft or anything.
Oh no, we're talking about like, we're testing for the Pro Tour and we're doing some gate crash.
There's literally no one else, but
yeah.
We see an Arid Mesa here. For Scott, it's going to search out a volcanic island. And we're probably going to see either a Delver or Niv Magus Elemental. Potential for one of the 1-mana cantrips as well here.
Looks like there's a Niv Magus Elemental. We got Fire and Ice. I think I saw a Daze. Alright, so Bryan, we've got Trop Fetch, we've got Swords Plowshares. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't play a fetch land or a white producing land since he has the swords in his hand. You didn't see Scott like go all in on the Niv Magus Elemental, but Bryan definitely seemed like he was afraid of maybe not afraid, but like he was cautious about it in the first game, and so like I would have expected him to have the Swords Plowshares on the ready.
So we see Brainstorming Resolve here. We're going to see an attack with Niv Magus Elemental just for 1, and we're going to see an Aired Mesa. So more traditional Brainstorm setup this game, excuse me, from Scott.
So Scott has another Niv Magus Elemental in his hand and has opted not to use it. He's got Lightning Bolt and Daze as well. And Bryan's just going to pass back the turn with 2 mana. He's like absolutely content to just play a slow game as long as Scott isn't going to do. Well, I thought he was content. If I'm Bryan, I'm perfectly happy to take one from the Niv Magus over and over again.
Yeah, I'd like to see Scott invest in the Niv Magus Elemental a little bit before I do something about it.
Yeah. And it's not like Bryan has, multiple sword effects. It looks like he's got 2 Brainstorms and a bunch of lands in his hand, and that's about it. So that Sword Splashers is actually kind of valuable.
And so we're going to see the second Niv Magus Elemental that you spoke of, and has joined the party at this point, as Bryan is going to draw a Savannah, and now you are going to see a Brainstorm.
Yeah. So we got to put a couple of these lands away. And we've got the Sylvan Safekeeper, another Misty Rainforest, and
Noble Hierarch.
Noble Hierarch? Okay, I thought it might be a Scavenging Ooze, but we're putting 2 lands back. Gonna play a fetch land. Played the fetch land. Got there.
And we're going to see a Noble Hierarch here.
Yeah.
And so, this is kind of the situation that you spoke of, because what if, for example, Scott is able to do just something crazy with the Magus Elemental this turn? I mean, he's going to wish that he had that Swords to Plowshares, and that right now he doesn't have much of anything. As we see it submerge here, drawn by Scott.
It's one of the cards that you thought he'd be bringing in. Do you think Bryan's going to play around Submerge in this game?
I mean, I think he can. I don't think it's incredibly difficult to, as we see a Fire and Ice, the Fire half of Fire Ice, excuse me, on Noble Hierarch.
So Bryan is fetching at the end of Scott's turn.
Yeah, just clear away that Brainstorm.
Yeah. Do you like the end of turn fetch? I'm a big fan of the upkeep fetch.
I'm a fan of the end of turn fetch, personally. Save some time.
Okay. So we've got Swords to Plowshares drawn by Bryan, which is exactly the card that he wants to see. Presumably he's going to play a fetch land, and there's going to be some brainstorming at some point. But he's just, looks like he's just swordsing main phase. Says, I don't want to get spell pierced or counterspelled or whatever.
Yeah, he's not getting fancy with his swords, but I think that if there's a card to get fancy with, is we're going to see a Submerge on his own guy.
So Scott is submerging his Niv Magus Elemental. He's saying, listen, I don't actually have any threats. I need to keep them around.
Sylvan Safekeeper again. Interesting play with Submerge. That's one that you don't see very often, submerging your own guy and basically discarding a card and time walking yourself. But I mean, it can lead to a win.
I think I'm okay with him doing that there, just because, like, as we said, his deck is threat light. He's already lost one Niv Magus Elemental. He doesn't have any other threats in his hand. He knows that he needs to get damage in with them. Again, though, like, I'm not a super big fan of the timing that Bryan used for it. I'm perfectly willing to take a couple pokes from a 1/2, and I'd like to get another spell out of Scott.
Yeah, and just basically, what you're basically saying is, you want to use your life as a resource.
Yep. So we had Brainstorm at the end of turn, and we're going to get my upkeep fetch here. So we got rid of some lands. It looks like we got a Qasali Pride Mage.
Bryan entertaining both halves of us as far as when to fetch for a Brainstorm, making us both happy here in the booth.
Yeah. I don't think he has a way to fight it, but like he might have been trying to play around Stifle from Scott, since Scott had mana up. So it looks like Bryan also has a Path to Exile in his hand.
And a draw step is going to reveal Wasteland.
So
Scott not deploying any lands. This is going to be a relatively nice one. Now, it is a little bit backwards to, you know, Wasteland and the Path to Exile guy, but again, I think it's perfectly reasonable to just Wasteland this, and then he doesn't really have much of a reason to Path to Exile that Niv Magus Elemental again, because, I mean, it's going to have to be more than a 1/2 for me to care about it.
Yep.
We're going to see a Lightning Bolt here and a Daze on the Lightning Bolt, and he's going to eat that. See, now I'm starting to care about Niv Magus Elemental a little bit more.
Yeah. So it looks like we're getting 2 spells eaten. Okay. So let's let them know that Niv Magus Elemental actually exiles spells, not put them in your graveyard.
Yeah. Now, what's also interesting here now is that Lightning Bolt did not resolve, correct?
Yeah. I'm unclear because Scott put 2 counters on the Niv Magus Elemental, and it gets 2 counters from exiling 1 spell.
Correct.
So I'm not sure what happened there.
Because he had 1 land available.
Yeah. So you know what? He probably. I think what may have happened is he ate the Daze, and the Lightning Bolt still hit Bryan. Is that possible?
Because I guess it goes. Oh, sure. So it goes. Daze targets it.
Yeah.
But Daze doesn't actually resolve because he ate it. Okay.
Yeah, it gets
got
exiled.
it. Okay, so it does resolve.
Yeah.
As we see a Spell Snare there on the Umazawa Jit, and we are also going to see a Kasali Pride Mage here. Exalted Trigger from the Pride Mage, letting Ali Rod get in for 2 points instead of 1.
Yep. And we hear from our spotter on the floor that the 3 damage from the Lightning Bolt did go to Bryan's head. We've got updated life total. That it's at 12 now.
$10 draft number 11 has fired. Please come to the stage.
So Bryan just looking to draw. As we've seen, attack for 3. He's got some very good live draws here, including Jace the Mind Sculptor. He also has additional copies of Umazawa Jit, and Scavenging Ooze is also a pretty nice one here.
Yeah. Are there any creature? I guess there's a Noble Hierarch, but we get spell snared. And so we're seeing with Scott's deck, the lack of threat density. He's seeing a lot of cards. He's brainstorming here. He's had a few draw steps, and he's drawing some removal spells. He's drawing some counter spells, but he's not drawing things that are going to get Bryan down to 0 life. He's drawing things that's going to get him to 9 life, 6 life, but not fast enough.
So we see Brainstorm from Scott in the main phase there. Nothing doing. Puts a few cards back, has a Forcible and a Lightning Bolt in his hand. Pride Mage attacking for 3 Exalted every turn and being protected by Sylvan Safekeeper, as we're going to see a Polluted Delta here.
So Scott brainstormed back the Polluted Delta and then decided to draw it. I think the cards that he had were just not exciting enough that I would want them instead of drawing.
Yeah, at this point, I don't want to be anywhere near a Force of Will. Also, he was at 10. He's now at 9, so he cut his clock from a 4-turn clock to a 3-turn clock just by sacrificing the Polluted Delta.
That's very true. I mean, getting another live draw step gets you exactly as far, but you could have been a turn ahead. But I mean, Bryan's just in complete control here. He's got a threat that Scott cannot deal with. Scott is, a deck that wants to be on the aggressive footing, wants to be the beatdown. So Bryan's in really, really good shape. So he's brainstorming. He's got 2 lands, a Jace, and a green card. Is that I think it's Green Suns.
Yep.
So he puts back the Jace because he didn't have a second blue.
So it looks like we're going to see a Green Suns Zenith for 3 here to search out Night of the Reliquary. I think I would have kept the Flooded Strand and the Jace and put the other ones back. And the reason being is because he's able to clear away with his Brainstorm, and he's able to start Fate Sealing with Jace. But, I mean, either way, I think he's in a winning position because now he has a huge Night of the Reliquary. So it can't be killed because of Sylvan Safekeeper.
I mean, he's just putting a ton of threats on the board. At this point, I think he should be attacking with the Dryad Arbor and the Sylvan Safekeeper 2 to do 4 damage instead of just 3.
I agree.
Small thing doesn't matter at this point.
But
very far ahead. Scott's very, very dead on board now. And he's got a lightning bolt that's not going to do anything. He's got force of will that's not going to do anything.
We're going to see a lightning bolt. It's going to go.
You.
Yep. All right, I'm going to go down to 8. And you're going to see Bryan count up his lands here, see how big Nether Reliquary is. But also, one of the things to keep in mind is that all of those lands can be sacrificed to Nether Reliquary to make it even bigger.
To Sylvan Safekeeper?
Yeah, to Sylvan Safekeeper, yeah. And he can deaden himself.
Once again, that is time in round 7.
All right, and we see the hand extended. Bryan Hawley is victorious over Scott Rogers' blue-red Delver deck.
So Bryan is going to move on to, this is round 7, he's going to move on to 6-1 now.
Yep.
It's going to be the second loss for Scott, so unfortunately no top 8 for him this weekend. Bryan's still in contention, not sure if he can draw, if he's going to have to play next round, but at the very least, he still gets to keep playing for a title this weekend.
Do you know what round he picked up his loss? I feel like it was like the 3rd or 4th round.
I'm actually not sure. I've not going to speak with him today.
Okay.